Hello again, all you lovely witches and seekers. It's Ryan, aka Dark Winter Moon, and today what I wanted to share with you is a very special video on a ritual I wrote called the Solitary Salentine Ritual. This is a reposting of a video I've already done. This ritual, this spell is near and dear to my heart, and I wanted to share it with you again. But before we get into that, I have a quick ask. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for all the ways you support me. And I could desperately use your help. I have desperately been struggling to support myself with my Etsy shop and my YouTube channel, and I am not quite making ends meet. For as little as $2 a month, you could support me on Patreon, and every month at that $2 level, you'll get a free digital download of any one of my sigils from my Etsy shop. And the tiers and perks go up from there. My Patreon and all the ways you can support me are linked below in the pinned comment. It's so hard for me to ask for money. It's so hard for me to admit even to myself that I'm struggling, and I am working through that and doing the shadow work and all the work to get over that. And like I said, I just need your support. And there are also many other ways that you can support me. So checking out my website and getting a tarot or rune reading are also very helpful. And even if you can't do any of those things, every way you support me is so greatly appreciated. So like I always say, comments, likes, subscribes. Comments are one of my favorite things because I get to help each one of you individually in real time. I love that. And like I said, I just need your help and I need your support. I love doing this and I want to continue to be able to do it for you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hello everyone again. It's Ryan with Dark Winter Moon in Boston. And today I wanted to talk about starting your journey with the ancestors. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my journey and also about setting up your own altar to the ancestors and showing you what I have on my altar. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a background with me, my journey with the ancestors has kind of been start and stop for years. So in some ways, I'm very much a beginner. I have had a block with my ancestors, and I really want to get to the reason for that block and how to connect with them more deeply, because in some ways I've never really been able to connect with my ancestors. Part of that, I think, is my lineage. My family has been in the United States since the 1600s, and so over that time we've lost our connection with our ancestral roots, and I desperately want to reconnect with them. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of the ways that I have tried to do that and talk about the successes with that, and also some thoughts about how I think that we can all better connect with our ancestors. I recently did the Ancestor DNA test, and I found out, as I suspected, that most of my ancestors come from Western Europe, with about 13% from Iceland. But other than that, there's no family stories passed down. There's none of the anecdotes that I've heard from friends that have a strong connection with their ancestors. So I am exploring how to more deeply connect, like I said. And hopefully some of this will help any of you out there who are struggling with connecting with their ancestors or are starting on the journey of connecting with their ancestors. So let's go to some of the anecdotal experiences that I've had with friends. So my roommate, Jules, very interesting. They have a tattoo on their forearm that represents their ancestors. And the moment I saw that tattoo without any prompting, I knew it had meaning and that it was charged. And they said that they got the tattoo to honor their ancestors, not realizing that it would open the floodgates for interactions with the ancestors. So their experience has been, since they got that tattoo, that it's kind of like there's a chorus of their ancestors, in some ways almost always talking to them and asking for things and prompting them and communicating with them. So I will give that caveat. Tattoos in and of themselves are very powerful magical objects, and when you do one to your ancestors, you're definitely opening those floodgates. So that is one way you can more deeply connect with ancestors. I've even thought about doing that myself, but I want to understand very, very clearly what the meaning of that tattoo is and what the intent of it is and exactly how much I want to open those floodgates. I also have another friend. He is African-American and Kenyan, and so on the Kenyan side of his family, he has a very strong ancestral tradition, and in his magical practice is very much connected to his ancestors. And I don't know all of the specific details, but apparently in his magical practice, he did some magic in which he asked the ancestors for help. And as trade-off, they asked in payment that he agreed to them that he continue their line. So he is basically committed because of his ancestors and because of that magic to get married and have children. And that's a big deal. The ancestors can be pretty demanding from what I've heard and experienced, sometimes even more demanding than connecting with deity. I mean, think about it. Think about those grandparents that you had, or even your parents that, had their opinions and their expectations for you and their demands of you, and multiply that by every single generation that you can connect with through your ancestor work and your ancestor magic. It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot of an ask from you, and a lot of maybe giving up some autonomy and freedom. On the other hand, it's like you've got all of that power and all that presence behind your back when you're in danger or in trouble and you need something. These are the people that are connected to you through blood and bone. And there's also that flip side of it, that I guess more positive side of it, that you do have that power, that presence, that determination behind you. And so to me, that makes it worth connecting with the ancestors. And another reason that I find it valuable is because you really get a sense of where you're from, or at least that's what I hope. And in many ways, I'm envious of both of those folks in my life because they have such a strong connection. I have a strong connection to my immediate family and cousins and uncles and aunts, but really beyond that, I don't. And I really feel like I'm missing something in that regard. I also feel like the ancestors are a connection to the lost, shamanic, ancestral land magic of my ancestors, the Celts and the Nordic peoples. And I feel like the ancestors are a conduit to being able to find some of those practices from the past that have been lost completely and incorporate them into my own spiritual practice. And so now, how about we take a look at setting up my altar to the ancestors? That way I can go through everything that I put on it and the reasons behind it, and hopefully that will help you find ways that you can more deeply connect with your ancestors. So how about we get to it? So I've already done a video on setting up your own altar. I'll link that here, but I always like to start with an altar cloth. And so if you look at this one real close, it has little skulls all over it, which I really appreciate. So obviously I'm choosing that for the ancestors. And then I'm putting it in a place where I already have my grandfather's flag from when he was in the cavalry in like the 20s, and his picture from the cavalry. And I hope to get a picture of my grandmother as well. Then this is my maternal grandmother. And then slowly build out pictures of different ancestors around this altar space. And so that's something that you can do to further connect with your ancestors. Is get pictures of them. It's that simple. And then these are all the things that I'm going to use today to put on the altar. So one of them is this something that I ran into at witch camp a couple of years ago. A person, she had this wonderful idea of doing magical contracts and using her old notary stamp to certify them in a magical way. And of course it says, on this day, October 10th, 2019, at Blueberry Cove Campground, St. George, Maine, James Ryan Edwards stated to be his intention to honor and continue growing in relationship with his ancestors and to pursue the continued unfolding of that path, affirmed and witnessed, and then with her signature and mine. And so I thought, what a great idea. I have been working to connect to my ancestors, so why not have her do a contract for me? So this is my magical commitment to deepen my relationship with them. And during that same journey, I was in a class about working with the ancestors, and I made this herb bundle. And so that's going on this altar too, because it has the energy of all that intent. And to me, it means my ancestors, and I set it aside and made it for them. And then I've got camphor oil. So camphor oil for me has always represented death and the dead. And so I'm putting that on the altar. It has a bitter smell. It's very kind of piney bitter. That represents for me. And for the candle, there's an interesting story with this candle. I used it in an ancestor ritual the other night, and it called out to me to be placed on my ancestor altar. So it's going on there as well. Now this one I didn't anoint with the camphor oil. For some reason for that ritual, the lavender worked. And so I put lavender on this candle. If you want to find out how to anoint a candle and bless it and dress it, I'm going to link that video here. And then the other things on my altar, well, not all the other things. So this stone, found it at a stone shop. I think it's jasper, but to me it looked like a bone. You know, it has like the bone marrow and the dried blood. And I was like, oh my God, that's my ancestor stone. So it looks like a piece of recently living bone to me. So I'm putting that on the altar. Always makes me think of my ancestors. Then of course, a crow or a raven. And this little guy, I also got, I think at the same stone shop. And he just had to come home with me. Not only is he sacred to my primary deity Apollo, but crows the world over are known to be messengers of the spirit world. And so I'm placing him on my altar. And then the other piece is this unicorn. And you may think, why this unicorn? So there's something that I want to point out. Your ancestors don't have to be just your ancestors of blood. They can be what I like to call your ancestors of common heart and common mind. And so this represents to me all of the queer people that suffered and died and were traumatized so that my rights could be fulfilled and protected, and so that queer people would not be forgotten. So the unicorn represents them for me. And then the rest of these items are actually from some of my grandparents. So this one, it's kind of hard to open with one hand with the selfie stick. I'll show it in a bit, but it is full of my grandfather and my father's cufflinks. And then these three items are my grandmother's sewing kit, her measuring tape, and her scissors. And my mom was kind enough to give those to me. And then this is one of my favorite things that I have. This is my great-grandfather's passbook from when he was on the railroad. So this is my mother's father's father. And that's an antique. And always very careful with it. And then this is his antique pocket watch that my grandfather, my mother's father, gave to me. And I treasure it greatly. So all the things on the altar, in some way, either directly were possessions of my ancestors or in some way represent them or the magic that I want to do with them. And so that's the point. It doesn't always all have to be things that were specifically your ancestors. So for instance, I've got the stone that represents their bones and their blood, and I've got the unicorn that represents the ancestors that are of common heart and common mind. So now that you have your ancestor altar set up, I would think of some sort of phrase that you want to connect with them and light your candle. So this is mine. Oh, blessed ancestors of blood and sinew and bone. Oh, blessed ancestors of common heart and common mind. Please take these offerings and the intent of this altar and help me grow into closer relationship with you. Blessings, and so mote it be. And so it's that simple. And then I would spend a few moments meditating in front of your altar and communing with the ancestors and seeing if you can connect with them. Well, there you have it all. And so there you have it. So just to recap a little bit, remember working with the ancestors is both very rewarding and very demanding. And your ancestors don't have to be your ancestors of blood and bone, but can also be those within the past with whom you connect and with whom you have a common heart and a common mind. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. Please subscribe and like and comment. I answer and read all the comments. And have a wonderful and blessed weekend. As always, blessed be. Love you all. Mwah.